Jordan Peterson undoubtedly has a brilliant mind, but where is he going wrong? Professor Peterson is one of the most compelling teachers I've seen. His abundant charisma is down to his profound insights, his lucid explanations, and very direct engagement with his usually sympathetic audience. If you watch a number of his lectures, a pattern begins to emerge that provides an insight to his approach. Unfortunately, it's not an insight that does him particular credit. As with many popular speakers, his energy and motivation are fueled by his visceral hatred of a particular aspect of our world. For many on the right, this is a political party or those of an ethnic group or race. The energy that fuels Dr. Peterson's oration comes largely from hatred of liberal postmodern academics in social science and humanities faculties in academia throughout North America, but especially in Canada. I don't think he's totally wrong in his analysis that the establishment of group identities, defined by a perceived source of oppression, is being allowed to overly influence social and political landscapes. It is entirely right that a self-identifying group such as those of the LGBTQ community can ask to be addressed in a manner they prefer. However, it is clearly wrong that a range of arbitrary pronouns has been written into law in such a way that a criminal offence can be committed if a speaker fails to remember it right. Where he's failing, though, is in not closing the loop by developing the argument beyond his identification of the problem. Another feature of right-wing thinking is the primacy of the individual over social groupings and society in general. He must be very aware that the branch of social science that preoccupies itself with society as opposed to individual behaviours is sociology. He clearly chooses to ignore this discipline, and I suspect that he would disdain to accept discipline as an appropriate epithet. This does not mean that he is wrong, but it does mean that he is blinded to the potential solutions and knowledge that sociology can bring to bear. This selective blindness is almost certainly the result of his aforementioned hatred of the academic disciplines that impose this social paradigm on academic institutions in the first place. Two areas of his thinking spring to mind as falling victim to this selective blindness. One of his underpinning themes is that the bottom 15% of the IQ range, that is, those with an IQ below 83, are unemployable, and in his view, neither end of the political spectrum has a solution to this political and building crisis. The left, he says, say train them until they can develop a skill, and the right say that they should just work harder, neither of which, he says, will work. He also frequently attacks social groupings that are set up to protect the rights of minority groups, citing that they create a relationship of oppression where no oppression previously existed. The other string to his bow here is that such political and social groupings frequently seek to achieve equality of outcomes and not just equality of opportunity, and that this is a principle that he abhors. There's the rub. Many of those social groupings are the consequence of perceived inadequacy, whether or not it is the result of lack of employability. By attacking these identity structures, he is destroying the safety net that has the potential to grant some dignity to people who otherwise have no self-esteem or sense of utility in life. And yes, I know that the lower 15% are not the same people who make up these groupings, but the people who run the rehabilitation centres and drop-in locations and youth centres are. These are the people that provide the infrastructure to allow for this. It's no great surprise that the other release valves include drugs and opiates. Why not allow these socially concerned groups to look after the interests of people who one way or another are struggling in society to avoid the even greater evil? Another area that frequently features in his lectures is the notion of debunking the principle of white privilege. It is hard to believe that a man of Dr. Peterson's intellectual reach could fail to realise that white privilege is the consequence of racial discrimination. Trashing an academic paper that fails to make a clear connection to the effects of racial discrimination is not a valid argument for the non-existence of white privilege. For instance, the fact that the police deal with black and white suspects radically differently in the US is clear evidence of white privilege as much as it is of discrimination. The fact that one paper he cites was badly written and probably wholly misguided is no proof that it doesn't exist. Empirical evidence suggests otherwise.